Today we have in our midst one of the greatest scholars for whom I have great personal admiration, though I cannot claim that I have read any of his books seriously yet, but I am going to read whatever he has published and whatever he will publish in future also, depending upon the lifespan I have waiting for me. Professor Jyotirmaya Sharma is known for his open expressions of convictions, which is not very usual among many of the scholars. Because he doesn't fear the consequences of what he writes or speaks, he has this courage of conviction taking him through even critical situations. I will read out a few landmarks in the journey he had through the academic world, before which I would like to say a few other things. The topic he will be talking today is Who Owns India, which is a sequel to the topic Professor Keshavan Veluthad had spoken about, the idea of India. These two topics were chosen by Keshavan and myself after discussing and then deciding upon the one to speak on the sequel, namely Professor Jyotirmaya Sharma. We all are used to hearing the people of India, as if India is either a mother or a father, and we all are India's children. This is a great misrepresentation of the fact. Actually, we own India, but not all the we. Who among us actually own India is a question extremely naughty and is answered or attempted to be answered depending upon one's political or academic leanings. We would like to hear from Professor Jyotirmaya Sharma, who really owns India. Is it the really rich people, the billionaires, or those who go to the polling booths very religiously to cast their votes, only to elect a few who, as if by magic, becomes the masters? Till then they will be claiming to be our servants. Suddenly they become masters. Are they the owners of India? We would like to know. And we would like to know the answer from the mouth of the horse. Nothing derogatory meant in the use of the word horse. I have great respect for Professor Jyotirmaya Sharma. Permit me to read a very brief account of the journey undertaken by Professor Sharma as an academic. He is Professor of Political Science at the University of Hyderabad and currently the Dean of the School of Social Sciences. He has taught in many prestigious universities in Germany, Austria, Sweden, and France, to name only a few. He has been a fellow of the Center for the Study of Developing Societies at the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies, Shimla, and has lectured at the universities of Baroda, Hull, and Oxford, and also at St. Stephen's College in Delhi University. He was visiting professor in democratic theory at the South Asian Institute, University of Heidelberg, and the Jawaharlal Nehru University. The International House Japan awarded him the Asia Leadership Program Fellowship for 2008. Professor Sharma also held a senior editorial position at the Times of India and also at the Hindu between 1998 and 2006. Most interesting about Professor Sharma is the choice of titles of the publications in his name. I shall read out the titles of a few only. Violence, the making and unmaking of Gandhi's religion of Ahimsa. The Ocean of Mirth, reading Hasyarnava Prahasanam of Jagadishwara Bhattacharya, a political satire for all times. A restatement of religion, Swami Vivekananda and the making of Hindu nationalism. Cosmic love and human apathy, Swami Vivekananda and the restatement of religion. Hindutva, exploring the idea of Hindu nationalism. This book has been published after translation into Malayalam, Telugu, and Marathi. Terrifying Vision, M.S. Golwalkar, The RSS and India, published in 2007. This has been translated into Malayalam. An edited volume titled Grounding Morality, Freedom, Knowledge, and the Plurality of Cultures, co-edited with A. Raghurama Raju, published in 2010. I will request Professor Sharma to please occupy the chair. And I have to make one more announcement that Professor Keshavan was honored at the last meeting where Professor Madhavan Palat was our speaker. Then we could present him only a scroll. We had planned to present him a book by Zizech. How I pronounce it, I am not very sure about it. But that book is very interesting. Freedom, a disease without cure. He has been described as a dangerous philosopher. If I may borrow the same expression, with his permission, I will also use Professor Sharma as a dangerous historian. His field proper is political science or political theory, but when he makes excursions into history, it becomes really explosive. I will request Professor Sharma to hand over the book, which could come here only a few days back after we had the last meeting. So, Professor Keshavan, please come over to the stage. I request Mr. Sanil Deep to present the shawl to Professor Sharma. Now the stage is all Professor Sharma's. Thank you very much.
Professor Sudhakaran, members of the ZARINA Trust, Professor Keshavan Veluthat, friends, ladies and gentlemen. The last time I was in this city, it was a rainy day. I was supposed to give a lecture at the Keshav Menon Auditorium, not very far from here, on a Saturday. And it was a rainy day. It was a CALICUT rainy day. It was not rains here in a special fashion. And I said to my late and sorely missed friend, P. Shivadas, who had organized the lecture, whether anybody would turn up. Because in Hyderabad, if you don't give free drinks and snacks, people don't turn up for book launches or speeches in any substantial numbers. And he said, no, they'll be there, don't worry, And of course, the hall was full at the end of the evening, and a lot of people were there. Now, I quietly said to people in Hyderabad, the lecture is on a Monday afternoon. Nobody likes a Monday and a Monday afternoon. Will there be anybody here? And I see a room full of people here. I'm deeply grateful that you come. I'm enormously indebted that you're here on a Monday afternoon. This trip is different in many ways. I had committed to this lecture in 2022. And then, as usual, life took over. And I had to postpone the talk. So when Keshavan asked me this time, I took it as an order, a command, that can come only from a dear friend and someone who has been forever very kind to me. And my apologies to Professor Sudhakaran and the ZARINA Trust for my, what should I call it, my unforgivable truancy that I didn't come earlier. Before I get on to matters serious, I must also say that in the little flyer, in the poster, in the flyer, they had a younger picture of me, much younger. Obviously, I was pleased about it. They had given me an additional degree too. Reality has now dawned, and there is the older me here without the extra degree. So Calicut also is hospitable, it's warm, it's forthcoming, but it also cuts you down to size. Thank you very much for both. Now, Keshavan has given the first lecture in this series titled The Idea of India. Speaking after he has spoken, and I've seen the script of the talk, it's not only a difficult act to follow, but it's also intimidating. So I will do my best to say something mildly interesting and fulfill the mandate given to me. And all those very, very kind words that Professor Sudhakaran said about me, wish he had continued. It's always a temptation. I wish to do something unconventional today with this very, very important topic that has been decided by both Professor Keshavan Veluthat and Professor Sudhakaran, the sequel to the Idea of India lecture, namely Who Owns India? It's easy to do a very quick political survey of who owns India. Professor Sudhakaran himself pointed out that it's a question one can answer in terms of citizenship, in terms of rights, in terms of distribution of wealth, and so on and so forth. But I want to take a very, very different trajectory. So if you are disappointed, I apologize in advance. My starting point, so let me start. My starting point is a certain moment in the epic Mahabharata. This is just before the Great War. Attempts are being made on all sides to broker peace and to avert what eventually would be an unprecedented massacre of humans and animals. In the course of many conversations that are happening, embassies are flying from one end to the other, peacemakers are excessively busy, and in these many series of conversations in the Udyoga Parva, Sanjaya begins castigating the Dhritarashtra. Itself something unusual in our times, anybody castigating the emperor or the king or the leader or anybody else. And Sanjaya begins to castigate Dhritarashtra. It's a very significant conversation. He tells the king that he had childishly mocked the Pandavas when they were beaten at the gambling game by shouting, "We've won it, we've got it." Dhritarashtra had spoken rudely because he knew that his sons had won the entire kingdom. So Sanjaya tells Dhritarashtra, you really need to come to your senses. You had inherited only the ancestral kingdom, but it was the Pandavas who are the real heroes who had gained the earth for you. Which, once they won the entire earth, and I want to stick with this metaphor of the earth, Prithvi, they entrusted it to you. They gave it to you for safekeeping, for fairness, for future justice. They had won it through their sword, but now Dhritarashtra, you, the king, you have started taking this fact for granted that you are the real owner of the earth, that it's your achievement. And because you have got into this delusionary mindset, you keep heaping insults and humiliations on the Pandavas. And so many such conversations ensue, and ultimately Duryodhana reacts. And he reacts not as arrogantly, as stridently as he would eventually do, but he starts to react. He claims that Krishna's sole aim in all of what was happening at this point of time was to completely annihilate the Kurus and hand over their property to Yudhishthira. But he says that's not going to happen. I will not allow it. The earth now rests, he says, on the Kurus. And the Pandavas have lost whatever they had in terms of their valor, in terms of their bravery, in terms of their ability to win the earth. After all, he says, Yudhishthira has abandoned the capital city and is now only asking for 5 villages. This is because, contends Duryodhana, Yudhishthira is afraid of Duryodhana's strength. He even goes on to boast that his strength and his resolve will eventually vanquish every single Pandava. Now, Dhritarashtra, after many moments of fatherly blindness for his son, is now coming to his senses. And so he counters his son. on hearing about Duryodhana's bravado about winning the war, he says that his son was babbling like a madman. And he says to Duryodhana about this whole question of owning the earth, owning everything that belongs to the Kurus. He says, and I quote, "Half the earth is enough for you and your ministers to live on. Offer the sons of Pandu what they deserve." End quote. Duryodhana tells him he's wanting to go to war, he's wanting to destroy the Pandavas. It had nothing to do with either Dhritarashtra, that is his own father, or any of his associates, or what they thought, what they felt, whatsoever. They were welcome to harbor their fears, their resentments, their apprehensions, their misgivings. He didn't care. He goes on to say that he and, that is Duryodhana and Karna, considered the approaching battle as a ritual sacrifice. And I want you to, I wanted to go along with how this ritual sacrifice is described because it's so contemporary in many ways. He says he will make a ritual sacrifice of the war because he will make Yudhishthira the animal victim, with a chariot for an altar, a sword for a ladle, a mace as large ladle to pour the libation, armor for the sacrificial enclosure, Duryodhana's 4 horses as the priests, his arrows as the Durbha grass, and his own fame, Duryodhana's own fame, as the oblation of clarified butter. He says, after having performed the sacrifice to the sun god, he says, we will return in victory, cloaked with glory, and with our enemies dead. So this is the background to this question of ownership. And till now, the sense that we get is of an elaborate property dispute. Questions of inheritance and ownership being decided by an elaborately choreographed war. Duryodhana will soon say something that will, for centuries to come, become the symbol of an insolent reluctance to share or to let go of something that is not rightfully one's own. And in Duryodhana's case, it's also ignorance that he hates to let go of. And as always with such quotes, their provenance is rarely checked and they are invariably partially quoted. So here is the full quote. And I quote, "I, Karna, and my brother Dushasana, O father, we 3 will kill the Pandavas in battle. Once I have killed the Pandavas, I will govern the earth. And if they kill me, then the sons of Pandu will enjoy the earth. I would rather abandon my life, Jivitam, my kingdom, Rajyam, and all my wealth, Dhana Sarvam, than live together with the Pandavas." This is the central idea of the quote. I have not finished the quote, but I'm going to repeat this sentence. I would rather abandon my life, my kingdom, and all my wealth than live together with the Pandavas. Not even as much land as one could cover with the sharp point of a needle, worthy man, will we relinquish to the Pandavas. End quote. So we all know this quote about the sharp end of a needle, the suchati kshanam. But what we don't know is something which no politics can tell you, which no amount of good intentions will tell you, no amount of ideological claptrap will tell you, is the inability of human beings to live together. But I'll come to that in a moment. Secondly, we notice that this is not about life, not about kingdom or wealth. It's not even about the 5 villages, and certainly not about land that one could cover with the sharp end of a needle. Ownership, then, may not always end in a war if we can figure out ways to live with each other. But it's difficult for people to like each other and reconcile their differences. Owning something requires identifying with it, investing emotions and ideas around it, and more often than not, investing sweat and blood into it. Owning is not always individual and solitary. So there is this huge complexity in the topic itself. Who is it an individual, is it a collectivity, owns India? And one can give many answers. In order to make this possible, human efforts to fabricate constitutions, political institutions, codes of citizenship have not always been efficacious in making people live together. Live together without dehumanizing each other, without the self-importance that one has, that one doesn't think anything of others or their existence or their identity. So to own certain things, real or abstract, we must be able to live with each other, but this is where lies a paradox. What is the paradox? Again, the Mahabharata explains it better than I can. Vidura tells the story of a bird catcher who sets his trap on the ground to catch birds. 2 birds, clearly companions, were caught in the trap, but both birds flew into the sky carrying the trap along with them. To the dismay of the onlookers, the bird catcher ran in the direction that the birds were flying. A sage watching this unusual sight asks the bird catcher as to why he was pursuing a pair of flying birds on foot. The bird catcher replied, "Together those 2 are stealing my only trap. But wherever they start quarreling, I'll get them." Vidura summarizes, relatives who come to blows with each other over possessions fall under the power of their enemies, just as those 2 birds fell because of their enmity. People will quarrel, people will fight, people will rub against each other, and there is no solution for it. Thus, this far, we seem to infer that the idea of owning something can never be entirely reducible to facts, physical dimensions, captured in spatial or quantifiable ways. It cannot be reduced to buying, selling, owning, possessing. Physical facts, dimensions, contracts, documents, affidavits, promissory notes, they limit, shrink, restrict, and circumscribe the very thing that is possessed or intended to be possessed. Perhaps the solidity of objects, documents, proofs of possession too are illusory. The novelist Alberto Mangle, Argentinian novelist, speaks of a time in Argentina where hundreds of thousands of people had nothing to eat, nor did they have a roof over their head. They started bartering. In the parallel economy that developed, Mangle mentions the extraordinary instance of poetry becoming a currency, a bit like baking and sewing. Writers would, he says, exchange poems in return for a meal or clothes. And so, if we are thinking along with David Schulman, we can say that sometimes the imagined is more real. It's fashionable in academic circles to constantly talk about critique of the Enlightenment, critique of the West, post-colonial theory, and so on and so forth. Can just be sorted out by turning Descartes on his head by saying, I imagine, therefore I am. We are so unused to saying, I imagine, therefore I am. Not I think, therefore I am. Earlier, I had suggested that owning is possible only if we can live together. But living together leads to quarrels. Therefore, I extended the argument and proposed that we can really own, and own with a sense of plenitude, only in the world of our imagination. It is this ownership that is more real than anything else. It allows us to think of things we want and cherish without politicians, bureaucrats, businessmen, corporate honchos, MPs, MLAs, murderers, ruffians, New Age gurus, and social media influencers disturbing our reverie and spoiling our proximity to reality. Also, till now, I have not directly answered the question, who owns India? The reasons have been already listed above. Any answer to this question will have to be tentative, approximate, and incomplete. Not only are there many claimants to this ownership, but also their claim would inevitably be laced with a frightful certainty. Every claim would have a counterclaim. In the final analysis, only claims driven by power, force, and authority will find any takers. And these claims will be of ownership of a very small sliver of what can be called India. Why limit the idea of India to a document or, or an ideology or a number, the current obsession with GDP or whatever else it is? Responding to a similar question and knowing the predictable flow of answers, almost more than 100 years ago, Ananda Kumaraswamy writes, I quote, it is the work of poets to make their hearers free. Poet, painter, sculptor, musician, artist, all these are synonyms. It is they who alone establish the status of nations, the painters of our visions, the makers of our songs, the builders of our houses, the weavers of our garments. These all are touchstones that can turn to gold for us, both past and present, if if we will it to be so. They can show us the significance of little things, the wonder of what is always going on. They tell us that we are what we are not because of knowledge, wealth, or power, but because of the dolls in our childhood games, because of the rivers that we worship as divinities, because of the skill of craftsmen and the loneliness of saints, because of the beauty of women and the splendid indifference of men to danger and to death. End quote. Let me make one final attempt to make myself more clear. There comes an instance in contemporary times when around the early 20s, Gandhi starts arguing that he had his own version of Hinduism. And he says, anyone who contradicts what I enumerate to be the version of Hinduism is wrong, and his version of Hinduism is incorrect, it's false, and so on and so forth. And people turned around and said to him, but isn't that a little intolerant? Isn't that a little subjective? Isn't that a little strident? But he was going to have none of it. It was his distinctive brand of Hinduism, with non-violence as a central principle, that defined his faith. And he almost felt that he could graft this non-violence onto the faith in a way artificially that it would in his lifetime, especially because there was a movement going on, become a central principle of the faith. He believed that this kind of grafting, artificial grafting, he was very clear in his mind that there was no great evidence of non-violence in Indian history ever. But it could be introduced, it could be grafted onto the faith. So in this context, he says, now here is again somebody who's dreaming of something, whose conception of his faith in this instance is not limited, is not confined, is not circumscribed to what exists solidly or in terms of what you can gather proofs about. This is what he says, I quote, "If India takes up the doctrine of the sword, she may gain momentary victory. Then India will cease to be the pride of my heart. She is not to copy Europe blindly. India's acceptance of the doctrine of the sword will be the hour of my trial. I hope I shall not be found wanting. My religion has no geographical limits. If I have a living faith in it, it will transcend my love of India herself. My life is dedicated to the service of India through the religion of non-violence, which I believe to be the root of Hinduism." He goes a step further. He says, I quote, "When India accepts the supremacy of brute force, I should no longer be happy to call her my motherland. It is my belief that my dharma recognizes no limits of spheres of duty or of geographical boundaries." End quote. Uncompromisingly stated, especially in these days of inflamed hyper-nationalism, Gandhi wants his version his vision and his understanding of Hinduism, with non-violence as its foundation to transcend nationality and geography. He knows it's a dream. He knows it's a fond hope. He feels that he'll be able to almost artificially graft, as I said earlier, non-violence onto Hinduism. Especially so because he says it's part of a movement, and in a movement people seem to gather together and share something in common. But he's ready to give up nationality, the idea of motherland, but not his dream. Because in his dream lies his much misused term, his values. So anyone who privileges a dream, a utopia, an imagination above brick and mortar, above a world where boundaries are drawn by a finger in the sand, owns India. Thank you.
In the sense, see, even our preamble of the Constitution doesn't speak that there is an evolution of India, is yet to be evolved. Because we, the people of India, solemnly resolve to constitute India. But India is not formed. It is still an idea. And how to constitute India, then only the question of inheritance of the Indian tradition comes. How the tradition is to come. This is one question, my doubt. If that be the case, the essence of your speech, what I understand is that to have one should have a sense of belonging. Then only you can constitute India. And how to create the sense of belonging?
I think we would get stuck with the we the people business. Who's the we the people? It's ambiguous. Which traditions would you want to inherit? We'll fight over those topics. The ones you want to inherit, I don't like. The ones I want to inherit, you don't like. Sense of belonging, yeah, sense of belonging as long as we don't fight. I loved my neighbors very dearly till they bought a dog. But now he barks all night. Though I love dogs, by the way. So I don't mind my dog barking, but I don't want your dog to be barking. That's the problem. See, belonging, we throw these words around, and I'm not saying you are throwing these words around, but I'm saying we do in the political discourse in this country. Swear by the Constitution, the preamble. See, it's a great document. I'm not saying the Constitution is not. But at every step, you would have this problem of we won't agree. We will agree only as long as it's comfortable for us to agree. What traditions will we inherit? No, why are we so scared of the idea of exile? I don't feel very comfortable here. No, not in this room, I'm talking about generally in the country. I find so many things really unacceptable. Now, if you belong to a certain political ideology, you will tell me, go to Pakistan, thereby claiming that you are primus inter pares as far as the ownership of the we the people phrase is concerned. No, I want to live here and I want to complain, crib. I want to be an exile in my own country. What prevents me from being that? When you have a cold, you have had a cold, sir? Okay, he's had a cold. When you have a cold, you are conscious of your nose, right? When you don't have a cold, you're not conscious of your nose. Similarly, when you have a cold, you take some inhalation if you are not the medicine tablet popping sort. If you love tablets, then you take some medicine. You don't cut your nose off, do you? I feel uncomfortable. I don't feel comfortable with what is happening. Not just today or yesterday, for a long time. My foray into political consciousness was 1975, when a teacher in my class was teaching types of pronouns: personal, possessive, reflexive, relative. And I learned it well. And some cops came into the classroom and arrested this teacher. The emergency. I have felt a sense of unease since that point of time. But what should I do to remove that unease? Belong to something which will make me frustrated in 10 days? My grandfather was politically naive, extremely politically naive. So by the time he died, he joined every political party and quit that party after 6 months. He made the full circuit. You know, in the 1960s, to do a full circuit of parties, there were not many parties there. So there was the Congress, there was the Swatantra Party, there was the Jansangh, and there was the Communist Party. He did a sweep of all of them. And yet something remained in him which troubled him. And all I'm trying to say to you, live with that sense of disquiet, that unease, because you will never be able to translate it into ease. And that is because we look for things that are concrete, as I said, in order to realize those dreams. Let that dream be one which is never fulfilled. You are anxious, you are uncomfortable, you are irritated with life. Not unhappy. Unhappiness is of a different dimension altogether. Live with your pain. Be an exile. You're still called to give lectures, see? Maybe after this, no more, but still called to give lectures. To express that angst. So I'm skeptical about this business of only traditions exemplifying our dreams. Our dreams should sometimes be also silly. Our dreams should be flippant. There's this film, Meera Nair's film, Water, where this child virgin widow, who's now an old woman living in the streets of Vrindavan, only dreams of the sweets she could have eaten on the night of her wedding only once in her lifetime, had her groom not died. So when she speaks in her sleep, she says laddu, peda, barfi. Why should I be reciting the Chandogya Upanishad in my dreams? Could also be laddu, peda, barfi. And this is where I think we unnecessarily complicate the political vocabulary of the state. We the people. Somebody will come immediately and say, no, how dare you say you are the people? We are the people. My favorite example, I've never given a speech without this example, so why not this time? There's a tribe of monkeys same tribe of monkeys living on either side of the banks of a river in the real story in Japan. And one set of monkeys on one side of the river develop this curious habit of washing the fruit that they eat. And the other remain non-fruit washing monkeys. And yet they don't come into conflict with each other. Now, if you were a Marxist or a socialist or a communist, you would say, there's enough fruit going around, so there is no conflict. You see, conflict only arises when there's scarce resources. There's no class war. Liberal, you will say, they're tolerant monkeys. And so on and so forth. Why did they not come into conflict? Because they didn't have the language to transform the difference between each other into a language of identity and difference. So we will be constitutional, law-abiding only till such time that the differences that we have will start to bite us. After which, the constitution will be a product of class privilege. It would be a Brahminical document. It will be this, it will be that. See, I'm a teacher. I hear this every day. Constitution? You want us to believe in the Constitution? Oh, but it's an upper class document. Okay, fine. So Constitution is out. Somebody else will come and say to you, oh, but it's a bourgeois excess, don't you think? Of course it's a bourgeois excess. Okay, out with it. So the question, the sequel to this lecture should be, why should we own India? There's no need to own India. Nor wanting India to own you. Be free. All these relationships of ownerships are like marriages. You fight, you love, you talk, you don't talk, you agree, you disagree. But you usually don't give up on each other because you say, for the sake of the children. So in a certain sense, do all that with India, but it's not the sum total of your or my hopes and aspirations. Don't limit it to that. Don't circumscribe to that. Because when you do so, the gentleman sitting next to you, you are limiting his imagination of India. Because if he doesn't agree with you, he's in trouble. So, at the end of the day, long answer to your very sharp two questions.
In the introduction, you are telling about the stories of the Mahabharata. Actually, the country belongs to Dhritarashtra, this one, who is being he is blind. He given the country to his brother Pandu as just to rule the country, not handing over the ownership. Being he has no children after his death, actually he should go to the children of Dhritarashtra, not to children of Pandu. Pandu has no children also, being these Pandavas are telling, being happen to be the children of his wife Kunti. This Kunti has got 6 children, including Karna. Why Karna was ignored in the list of that children? And another thing, why this war and Lord Krishna supported illegally to give the power and hand over give the support to the Pandavas ruling the country over power and they sharing the country.
No, I'm only interested in the question of ownership. I'm not interested in I'm interested in this whole idea of Duryodhana saying, it's not about land, it's not about rule, it's not about wealth. It's about me disliking those guys. So whether they are Pandu's children or Kunti's children is for me immaterial. I mean, that for me is of no consequence. What is of consequence is the question that it is not about ownership that we fight, it's about incompatibility. Human beings are, we have been lied to by people like Aristotle, etc., and we teach them in political science textbooks man is a social animal. He's not. He's not. We all pick and choose people we want to live with, to be friendly with. We lose friends in a lifetime. We make new friends. We get to know new people. A lot of it is driven by self-interest. In the same Mahabharata, Bhishma says human beings are a slave of self-interest. Arthasya purusho dasa. So I get your point that whose land is it anyway? But that's a secondary question. The question is, we find it difficult to live with each other. And that there is no easy explanation for it. How should we live with each other? We can keep trying. I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to fabricate ways in which human beings will live with each other. We've been trying this since time immemorial. But what I wanted to do was to complicate the idea of ownership by saying ownership wouldn't happen if you got a piece of document from some excavation in Indus Valley saying such and such people own this land. It won't be resolved. That's why what Gandhi says is the things I believe in, the things that I value, go beyond possession, land, patriotism, all of that. And if I can't live and die for that, then my lip service to nationalism is fake. So, in the speaking in Chennai somewhere to an audience like this, somebody wanted to corner me and asked me, so you obviously don't like nationalism very much. Uh, where where does the nation stand in your hierarchy of loves? I said, nobody's ever asked me this question, but it's a great question. So let me start thinking. Who do I love most? My friends. Why? Because I chose them. Number two, my fellow workers, my students, colleagues. Because they had no option of choosing me. They are stuck with me. Number three, my parents, who suffered me over the years. Number four, my city. Number five, the languages I speak. Do I have to spell out where the nation came? Now, of course, you would say, but all of that is in the nation. No, it's not. Do I have only Indian friends? No. So I think one will have to expand the notion of both India and ownership. Idea of India will automatically get expanded once you expand the notion of ownership. That's all. Yeah.
Sir, I am Uday Kumar, a retired teacher. I think you are saying that in a nutshell. Nobody owns India. Am I right?
No, I'm saying what is the need to own? Why do you need to own? The moment you say one needs to own something, I said in my speech, restricts, shrinks, circumscribes the idea. I need this, which means, and it has to be quantifiable, it has to be solid. You need a bill, a receipt, an invoice, you must pay GST. Why do you need to own India? You see, if you had heard Professor Keshavan's talk the previous time, the idea of India, he ends on very much this note, though in a different language. Why does one need to? What is the need to own? Gandhi says, my India is not restricted to the geographical limits of this country. It is exemplified by a value which I consider to be sacred. And for that, I don't need the geographical limits.
Should I make another point, sir?
Please go ahead.
Sir, yesterday in the parliament, Mr. Tejasvi Yadav stated that.
I don't watch those things, so you'll have to tell me a little more.
Yes, sir.
No, I genuinely don't. I stopped getting a newspaper. I worked in 2 newspapers at very senior levels. I stopped getting a newspaper on the 18th of January 2006.
Okay, sir.
So, I have no clue what's happening in Parliament. I simply know Zakir Hussain Saab is dead, which is very sad.
Okay, sir. Sir, the point is that Tejasvi Yadav was saying...
Who is he?
Member of Parliament.
No, which party?
From BJP.
Ah, okay.
Okay, sir. And he was stating in the Parliament that we own an India according to not the geographical India which was put as a state of as a federation of states according to the constitution, but according to the Puranas, according to the myths, and according to the beliefs that created India in the past. What do you think about Tejasvi's opinion about owning India in that idea?
You want a direct answer or a
No, sir, your
serious answer?
Your answer, sir.
My answer is this. One of the Upanishads, there is a story. There's a boy who watches a sage under a tree teaching Brahmin children. He wants to learn. But people tell him, Gautama, or whoever is sitting there, will not take you because he teaches only Brahmins. So he goes to his mother, Jabala, and says, I want to learn, but they tell me I have to know my Gotra. Jabala says, go and tell him that your mother worked as a maid in many houses and slept with many men. I do not know who your father is. But go and tell Gautama, your name is Satyakam Jabala. That's your Gotra. He goes and tells Gautama this. Gautama says, turns it in his favor and says, only a Brahmin could have spoken the truth so starkly, so I accept you as my disciple. Every single 19th century nationalist thinker, including all the Swamijis, They edited this story out of their narratives. They called it vulgar. This Tejasvi fellow seems like the Bangalore fellow, not Yadav, right? Surya. Tejasvi Surya, he's a Bangalore guy. He'll be Prime Minister one day, don't worry. No, I mean, given what he says, certainly. No, who will select which myth, which Purana, and how will you make them agree that this is the authentic thing that you're talking about? By kicking me, na? You'll kick me if I disagree. You'll lynch me. Won't you? If I disagree with you, you'll lynch me, no? Certainly, right? So that is my answer to what Mr. Surya said in Parliament. Because, I mean, how would we agree? No, I think the Jabala Satyakam story is a beautiful story. It's a very beautiful story. I don't read it as anti-Brahminical as many people do, or anti-this or anti-that. I see it as something more. You go out on the street and do a straw poll. 99% of people wouldn't know that the original Shakuntala story is in the Mahabharata. That there is no ring and fish and all the... I mean, Kerala, Calicut, of course, that particular story might have greater longevity. But certainly it's not a story that somebody else wrote many years later. It's in the Mahabharata. And there is no fish, there is no ring. None of this is there. No, who are these? You see, this is all, this whole business of searching for a past is quintessentially Western, because the current model of nationalism that we have in the country is Western. It has no provenance here, none at all. So when Rousseau is asked, he says when people have to live together, commonly live together, and he fabricates something called general will. What is the general will? A continuous participation in a common good. Sounds beautiful. Then he's asked, what happens if some people don't agree to your common good or your conception of the common good? He says, we shall force people to be free. No, it's Sartre had a term for people like your Yadav or Surya or whoever he is. Idle moralizers. What? This is, it's nice for a constituency to hear, oh, we must do it according to our traditions, our past, myths, our Puranas. Myths are the same, the Puranas are the same, Upanishads are the same, all these texts are the same. We have no sense of discrimination. And Keshavan is sitting here, sort of done a lifetime of telling us what texts are and how to read them. And somebody gets up in Parliament and tells him now, we should do according to these texts. And how would you go about it? I mean, I'm ready to accept Tejasvi Surya's recommendation if you are the chairman of that committee, Keshavan.
How do you locate your position in the society unless there is a society? See, if I say that I am an Indian, I have the tradition which was inherited from this Mahatma Gandhi.
I mean, Jyotiba Phule, this Ambedkar, and many others like that, Rabindranath Tagore, they were all universal in their approach. So when I say that I am an Indian, I feel proud to be a part of the India who who have inherited the traditions of these great men. So if that be the case, what is wrong in telling that I am an Indian and I own the Indianship?
Who told you not to? You are tilting at the windmills, sir. I'm not telling you not to own. Whoever you want to own, you own. Don't say I've inherited it. Because inheritance means they have given it to you. They have given nothing to you. They have given it to whoever wants to take it. Inheritance means that. That's what Dhritarashtra is being told by Sanjaya. You inherited a little piece of land. It's been expanded by the Pandavas. Now you claim it to be your own. Right? Who tells you not to live in India? Problem arises when you tell me who I should inherit, who I should worship, who I should read, who is more true, who's more authentic. Then the problem arises. Please feel free to read whoever you want to. I mean, please say I owe my allegiance to Manava Dharma Shastra, Bhagavad Gita, whatever you want to do. Gandhi said his theory of non-violence came from the Bhagavad Gita. I disagree. But that's neither here nor there. The problem arises when you prevent other people from claiming their inheritance. Then it's a problem. Do what you want to. It is when you tell your neighbor how to behave, it becomes a problem.
Sir, my doubt as supplement to that sir's doubt. So 10 days back, Allahabad sitting High Court judge made a statement. India would be run according to its majority. To whom does India really belong?
I don't know. It belongs to nobody, because why should it belong to somebody?
No,
And Allahabad High Court judge will say what he wants to say. Let him say so, no?
No, that remark, the statement, whether it is correct or not.
I don't know. Sudhakaran has not invited me here to authenticate the remark of an Allahabad High Court judge.
No, but sir, this title itself, we want to know the real.
I told you, nobody knows who owns India, because nobody should want to own India, because ownership is about keeping to yourself, hoarding, mine. That's what I told sir, right? His India is as...
We want to know that.
Yeah, but I have no answer. No, you can't compel me to give an answer. Especially to an Allahabad High Court judge. He can say what he likes. By who? You include me as one of them? I don't. I came to know about this today, now. And that Tejasvi fellow also, I had once met him in an aircraft. So that is how I know that he is prone to making such statements. Not a Yadav, but...
No, actually we want to make this all the points with a contemporary event. Then only.
I don't do current affairs. No, that Rajdeep Sardesai, Arnab Goswami do.
No, we expected the same type.
You'll have to blame Professor Sudhakaran for that. His choice was incorrect. Huh? No, I have nothing to say about any judge or anyone. I mean, the state of judiciary in India I have known for a long time. Somebody who has fought 72 plus cases in one's life, I know the quality of judiciary, so less said the better.
When we decided on the topic for today's speech, my idea was just what you said, that India cannot be owned by anyone. If at the rate we are claiming that India is owned by somebody, that means there are many who do not own India but reside in India.
Yeah, precisely.
One more thing. At this rate, we are going to own sunrise, sunset. Moon is already on list. So, the ownership is a question which we should discard as something that has outlived its purpose.
Absolutely.
So, if you agree with me, if you want to add anything to it, please.
No, I completely agree with you. I think the question of owning is a non-starter. Why would you want to own India? Values, yes. Things you're passionate about, yes. That's why I said during the course of the lecture that the word values is misleading. For Gandhi, it's non-violence. I'll stop with a charming story of Ustad Amjad Ali Khan's father, Hafiz Ali Khan Sahab. Hafiz Ali Khan Sahab happens to be in Rashtrapati Bhavan. He's got some award, one of the Padma Awards. And the president is President Radhakrishnan. President Radhakrishnan is introduced to Hafiz Ali Khan Sahab and he says, Khan Sahab, can I do something for you? Which in those days meant, do you need a piece of land? Do you need a house? Do you need a pension? And Hafiz Ali Khan Sahab says, actually, the very civilization of India is in peril because of one reason. So Rajendra Prasad is very, very concerned. He calls his secretaries and ministers around and says, Khan Sahab says, civilization is in peril. What is it? Khan Sahab says, the number of people who can render Darbari Rag Darbari, is very seriously dwindling. There are not many people who can render the Rag Darbari sufficiently well. He was dead serious about it. He was extremely serious about it. There was nothing flippant about it. And Rajendra Prasad didn't know how to react. He didn't know how to react because he thought of India, Indian civilization, in terms of nuts, bolts, and screws of a civilization. You think of it in terms of Vedas, Upanishads, whatever. I think of India in terms of Hindustani classical music. It's my first love. My students often say, if I'm smiling in the university, it's his good day, which means he's got up in the morning with a tune in his head, a raga in his head. And when I'm scowling, when I'm irritable, I haven't got up with a tune in my head. It's as simple as that. For Hafiz Ali Khan, the inability to render Darbari correctly is a civilizational crisis. India is in peril. Indian civilization is in peril. And he was serious about it. I think we have to get out of this imposed mediocrity of news channels, current affairs, statements of politicians, and look at a world which to distort what Professor Sudhakaran said a minute ago a little, which nobody wants to own, but it's very precious. Like Darbari. One Hafiz Ali Khan. Thank you all very much.
Sir, my name is Abdul Kader. I think your speech attracts 124 IPC former that sedition charges, because you said that India is nobody's. If I deliver the same speech, the authorities will charge 124 IPC against me.
I did.
That is the difference between.
One minute.
That is the difference between the.
1 minute. I did not say nobody owns India. I said nobody should want to raise the question of wanting to own India, because it is not limited by, as I said throughout the evening, 124 or not, by limited imagination. I think of India as only this, I think of India as only this. See, I love a line from a poet who was at that point of time in 1971 describing the not yet formed state of country of Bangladesh. Cafe Azmi. Cafe Azmi says, in the voice of the state, the new country of Bangladesh, I am not a wall which can be felled by you. I am not this that can be destroyed by you, etc. And then the last line, the punch line, I am the dream of a madman. मैं ख्वाब हूँ दीवानों का. Until and unless that isn't there, the question of who owns India, doesn't own India, we can say this in lighter vein, but I think we have to be serious about it. What I have been saying is you don't restrict the idea of who owns India. I said to the gentleman there, you own it in your way. You own it in your way. But there comes a moment when you are prevented from owning it in the way you like. And there is no discussion, there is no genteel discussion about it. You're not persuaded to somebody else's point of view, you're forced into somebody's point of view. No, this whole majority business, I hear it in my class every day. So one student got up and said, sir, when we are in a majority, we'll bring back sati. So I said, we kaun hai bhai? Who is we? We Hindus will bring back sati. I said, fine, do so. So he said, you're not bothered? I said, no. I just hope that the future Mrs. Moitra, who would, I'm sure, be a fantastic woman, survives you. She won't have to be a sati. No, I think. Let's be serious about it. I get the point you're trying to make. But it's not because what I said or you said. Because I didn't say what you implied I said. I made a philosophical point about the question itself being questioned. Why would you want to do such a thing? In this world, in the world of IPCs, Criminal Procedure Acts, bureaucrats, politicians, I listed them, right? Murderers, frauds, all of those. मैं ख्वाब हूँ एक दीवाने का. I'm the dream of a madman. And I think whatever this entity India is, must allow and will allow mad men and women to dream their dreams. That's my answer. I think we must thank you all very much.
Hi, everybody. We are always very happy to render idam namama, but we always want everything. So, we would like to own anything which do not belong to anybody. So, it's better to think about ownership of India. Dear Professor Sharma, I have great pleasure to thank you representing the present day audience. We are grateful to you for your lecture on the ownership of India. For different people, the answer to the question, who owns India, is different. The answer depends on the differences in our concept of democracy and freedom. Our constitution talks about we the people of India, to mean that the people of India owns India. And our pledge also, when we were students and schools, we used to take a pledge, India is my country, all Indians are my brothers and sisters, like X is my mother, I love my mother. I thank you, Professor Jyotirmaya Sharma, on behalf of the ZARINA Trust and on my own behalf for your enlightening lecture. Jyotirmaya literally means the enlightened. We are happy to remember. May I thank the august audience also for their presence and active participation. Once more, thank you, one and all. Thank you.